Hello everyone, I'm Shalika De Silva. On behalf of Samadhi Buddhist Foundation, I'd like to welcome all of you to our month of November Clarity of Mind through Mindfulness session. Today our topic is a teaching on inquiry and wisdom. This is from the Kalama Sutra, and this is also another topic from Bhikkhu Bodhi's book, In the Buddha's Words. With great respect, I'd like to invite Most Venerable Panadure Chandarathana Thero to commence today's session. Thero Sanavante.
Yeah, Thero Shalika, hope you can hear me.
Yes, Pante, we can hear you.
Yeah, fine. So anyway, before we start the session, let's spend a few minutes in mindful sitting so that we are quite settled and we are adjusted to the posture and quite ready internally to accept or receive the teaching. So I invite all of you to sit comfortably so that we can spend a few minutes in mindful sitting. Keep your head straight, neck straight, shoulders relaxed. Arms may be resting on your lap. Upper half of the body straight. Not rigid, but relaxed. And your eyes gently closed. Recognize this sitting posture. We are in a comfortable sitting posture. There might be various thoughts coming to your mind. Don't encourage them. You can simply settle back in the posture. Again and again, bring your attention to the sitting posture. So we are simply sitting. Nisinnova, nisinnom hiti pajanati. So Buddha recommends, okay, while the body is sitting, so let that be a mindful activity. Typically we sit, but the mind is not with the sitting, but it may be wandering. But right now, we allow the mind to settle in this sitting posture. You can take a deep breath, hold it for a while, slowly release. Let's do a simple body scanning. We'll start from the top. Head is straight. Eyes are gently closed. There could be a subtle sensation at your eyelids. Lips are gently touching, and again there is a soft sensation there. Jaws are not tightly coupled. They are released. You are not making any thrust using the tongue. Tongue is also at its root. And there is no any tension in your face. You are not thinking any particular problem. Rather, we are trying to enjoy the present moment. We appreciate this opportunity. We might be engaged with so many other activities, but now we had some time for ourselves, to look at ourselves, to be with ourselves, to acknowledge or to comprehend ourselves. So appreciate that opportunity and have a slight smile. Again, take a deep breath, hold it for a while, slowly release. Our head straight, neck straight, shoulders are also relaxed. And you can recognize how clothes are touching the body. At certain places, it might be tight. At certain other places, it may be simply touching. All that you can try to recognize. Like you are staying inside the body and looking at or experiencing the touch sensation happening because of the clothes. And as we are settled and well connected to the body, various bodily processes are available to us, accessible to us. Maybe you can recognize how heart vibrates or how the breathing process happens. And according to breathing, how the abdominal movements happen, rising and falling of the abdomen, maybe blood circulation, and here and there various aches and pains. All that actually indicate our mind is resting in the present moment. We are not in a dream, we are not in a fantasy, we are not distracted. Rather, our full attention is within the body. And it is we are developing the body awareness. It is not that we are trying to think or imagine. Rather, we are well connected to the direct experience. And let's spend few minutes experiencing the rising and falling of the abdomen. As we breathing in, the abdomen comes forward, rising. As we breathe out, abdomen returns back, falling. So we can spend few minutes mindfully experiencing this rising and falling. If a mind wanders, you can introduce noting. So when you experience rising, you simply note it as rising. When you experience falling, you can simply note it as falling. Rising, falling. Nothing to think. It is not a big thing to do. Rather, with a very pleasant, soft, mindful attention, we are paying to each rising, each falling. And our buttocks are touching the cushion, and we can recognize some pressure at our buttocks. Legs are bent, legs muscles are relaxed. There is no any tightness there. And probably your foot touching the ground or a carpet. So we are in the mindful sitting. This posture is sitting. So we can mindfully aware of that sitting posture. Now let's come from the bottom to the top. Legs are bent, foot touching the ground, leg muscles are relaxed, buttocks touching the cushion, and there is some weight or pressure at our buttocks. Upper half of the body is straight, According to the breathing, the rising and falling of the abdomen happens. Arms are resting. Upper half of the body is straight. Clothes touching the body. Shoulders relaxed. Neck straight. Head straight. Eyes are gently closed. Lips are touching. Now we are keeping our attention at the nostril, trying to recognize each in-breath, each out-breath. We assign a little task to the mind, not to miss any breaths. We need to mindfully aware of each in-breath. We need to mindfully aware of each out-breath. And again, we are not following the breath. We maintain our attention at the nostril. So if you are able to continuously pay your attention, you can introduce clear comprehension into the picture. Try to see from which nostril the in-breath going in, from which nostril the out-breath coming out. Are you experiencing the beginning or the middle or the end of the in-breath? Are you experiencing the beginning, the middle, or the end of the out-breath? So we are closely examining, closely investigating the whole process to know these little details. Compared to in-breath, whether the out-breath is long or short, whether it is cool or warm, where the in-breath touches, where the out-breath touches. So we are inquiring, investigating. If you like, you can continue the same meditation technique, or else now you can switch to any other technique, maybe elements meditation, maybe mindfulness of feelings, maybe paying attention to the mind itself, or else if you know how to maintain an unattached mind, unestablished mind, you can switch to that mode. So now we are going to start the Dhamma sermon. So we'll first pay homage to the Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. So as Shalika mentioned, today we are hoping to discuss on the Kalama Sutta. It's a very interesting and fairly a popular sutta, which is talking about the inquiry and the wisdom in a way. So this is also called as Kesamutti Sutta because Buddha preached this sutta while he was staying at Kesamutti, the area called Kesamutti. So it is also called as Kesamutti Sutta, available in the Anguttara Nikaya, Tika Nipata. Now, so while Buddha was dwelling at Kesaputta, a town of the Kalamas. So the people are known as the Kalamas. And Buddha is not alone, and he is with a fair amount of Sangha, the members of the Sangha. But anyway, before the arrival of the Buddha, there were already many other teachers arrived to this Kesaputti. And they have preached certain Dhamma or certain kind of different teachings to the Kalamas. And but anyway, there are contradictions, anomalies between their teachings. And so these Kalamas are a bit confused about it and they were doubtful about it. So one person is telling one thing, another person is telling another thing. So likewise, so many different types of teachings were there. So the Kalamas were puzzled to which we need to select, which one is the truth and which one is more correct, which one leads to happiness or which one is wholesome. So sometimes so they have a kind of a perplexity related to the different teachings that delivered by various different teachers. And this is not only happening even, I mean, during that Buddha's time, even today this kind of thing is possible. So different teachers are there and they teach different teachings. And one would say one thing and another would say another thing. So sometimes the listeners are unable to understand which one is more correct, more accurate. So therefore, in this sutta, Buddha give a kind of a guideline to understand what is the kind of a proper teaching, on which criterion that we can select. So therefore, Buddha provides guidelines for discerning truth and emphasizes reliance on personal understanding and ethical principles. So personal understanding, personal experience is something that Buddha emphasizes. It is not a blind belief. And sometimes people may tend to believe something which also may be a kind of a dogmatic kind of a belief. But Buddha didn't encourage that. Rather, he encourages this direct touch. He encourages some personal experience. Therefore, when we are talking the Buddha's teaching, one important, unique feature of that is it is not merely a faith system. Rather, what you are believing or what you are being faithful, you can actually verify. At the beginning, you can't immediately verify because the necessary talents, necessary skills are not available. But as you continue your practice, those necessary qualities, skills started being with you or appearing in you, developed in you. Using them, actually, you can verify the reality or the truth of the Buddha's teaching and how true it is even now and what I am experiencing. So it is not that you are believing now, rather you are verifying using your own mind, certain qualities that develop within your own mind. And just to give a simple example, now say most of us are familiar with mindfulness and we didn't know what it was and we might have heard about it. So it's still something we have heard, not that what we have tasted. But anyway, once we started our practice, slowly we start tasting it. We start being mindful while walking. We start being mindful while sitting. We start being mindful while brushing our teeth. So likewise, we are introducing this quality of mindfulness to various activities. As a result of the continuous practice, now you can see certain growth in this mindfulness. So later, you can see there is a certain skill which was not there in the mind, but now a new quality, a new skill being developed in your mind. So likewise, all the interesting qualities that Buddha explained are possible to inculcate in our mind, grow in our mind, and later we can verify them and we can get the benefit. Actually, we can then verify how true is Buddha's teaching. So that is the interesting part of the Buddha's teaching. And then once Buddha arrives there, so Kalamas actually express their confusion to the Buddha. Some ascetics praise their own doctrine and revile the others. We are perplexed as to who speaks the truth. And interesting thing is, it is not only the teachers emphasize their own teaching, they go to criticize the others' teachings. They say, okay, only my teaching is the best teaching, only my teaching is the truth, everything else is useless. So this is the kind of an attitude sometimes teachers are having. So the Kalamas, as the listeners, so they become perplexed. So because everyone is emphasizing their own teaching, criticizing the others, so which one is the correct one? So they are in a kind of a doubtful situation. So therefore, here, Buddha give a kind of an encouragement. It is fitting for you to be in doubt, for doubt arises in perplexing matters. So Buddha admit this situation. So rather than Buddha say, okay, you should not be doubtful, rather Buddha say, yes, it is possible, it is true that when people are talking their own doctrine and telling this the best doctrine, everything else is empty, useless, it may be true that it is that the doubt arising in your mind. And now Buddha is giving a kind of a guideline, a type of criterion for us to follow when something is mentioned. Anyway, at first he kind of abandoned certain wrong or baseless type of belief. So simply he say, do not believe something just because it is based on tradition or lineage. Now we know that our parents are following something, our ancestors are following something. It came to us also from them. So are we going to believe it, thinking it is the truth? So, but the interesting thing is the truth might be something different. Even though my ancestors, even though my parents were following something else, the truth might be a completely different thing. So we have to have a kind of an open mind to even to inquire what we have start believing from generation to generation, coming from our lineage, coming from our tradition. So that's why sometimes when we are born to a particular tradition and when our parents are believing it, practicing it, and trying to explain it to us and maybe even imposing it, then we get trapped. We are forced to believe it. But here Buddha encourages, don't do like that. Even though your parents follow something, even though your ancestors follow something, even though your tradition follow something or lineage follow something, don't think that is the best type of a teaching. So have a kind of an open mind. And then written in sacred texts. So that is another area. So we know that various texts are available. And once you go to a library, there are many, many books available. And some of them are considered as sacred, some religious sacred books. And what is written there is unquestionable. Sometimes people think like that. So this is the sacred scripture and you are not supposed to question on them. So certain religions have that kind of an attitude. So the followers are unable to verify. Followers are not allowed to question. Rather, they have to believe them. They have to trust them, accept them, because it is considered as a sacred text. But Buddha on the other hand, discourage it. Buddha say, okay, don't think that something is sacred because someone else is telling it is a sacred text. So don't just buy that. Try to inquire. Even what is mentioned in the text, you need to apply it to yourself and see, rather than simply believing it, rather than simply venerating it. So the Buddha's approach is quite open in that sense. So it's a kind of a unique feature of the Buddha's teaching. So rather than promoting blind belief, he introduces this ability to inquire. So as human beings, we are a kind of intelligent beings. So we have this intellect and we should use it rather blindly, dogmatically believe something. And then another attribute delivered by an eloquent speaker. Sometimes people are very talented in speaking and trying to convince the others. And so they start preaching. They come up with various ideas, they come up with various different views. And rather than they keep them unto themselves, so they want to preach it to the others. They want others also to follow it. So that is another area. Probably you can remember sometimes when the colonial era has happened, so many different English and other different people arrived certain countries and they imposed their own religion, they imposed their own practice, maybe even forcefully, and sometimes even with the contribution coming from the government, from the king. So they convert the king to their side and they forcefully even try to convert the other people, the civilians. So these kinds of situations are quite common even today. Sometimes people are trying to convince through various different kinds of convincing preachings. Now, Buddha here still encouraged the inquiry. So even though the preacher or the teacher is actually eloquently speaking about it, still have a kind of an open mind. You need to verify. You need to apply what he is telling to your own life, practice it for a while, and see whether you getting certain benefits. And then logical or reasoned. Now, certain teachings are quite logical, and you can internally contemplate about it. You can internally compare about it, logically think about it, reason about it, and then you can come to a conclusion. So that is also not a bad thing, but that alone is not enough. So that is the point highlighted here. So it is not that Buddha is denying each and everything. Rather, while these things are possible, don't limit yourself only to these things. Maintain another attribute that I can verify it. I can apply it to my life. I can practice it, practically get involved in it, and then you can verify through your own experience. So something is experiential. It is not something that you are blindly believing, but what it is mentioned maybe in the sacred text has to be experienced and then proclaimed by a teacher. So there are certain popular teachers, and when sometimes we we tend to think or we tend to believe when a popular teacher has mentioned something because he has some popularity, that he has many followers, and we also tend to believe what he is saying. So Buddha even gives some provision there rather than simply believing even that. So even there Buddha say, so have little space for your own verification. He may be a popular teacher, but listen carefully what he is talking and apply that teaching to yourself, practice it, and see whether you get the benefits. Now see the key principle that Buddha is emphasizing here. When you know for yourself that something is unwholesome and leads to harm, abandon it. When you know it is wholesome and leads to welfare, adapt it. Now here we have the kind of a criteria to see whether a certain teaching is wholesome or unwholesome. So how are we going to define what is wholesome and what is unwholesome? So that is explained later. Actually, certain wholesome roots are there applied in our mind, and certain unwholesome roots are there appear in our mind. So typically what you know, as we know already, greed, hatred, delusion, lobha, dosa, moha are considered as the unwholesome roots. So whenever certain unwholesome roots are whenever certain unwholesome roots are very much based in the mind, or they are operating in the mind, so basically at that time we can see our actions may be not wholesome, our actions may be unwholesome, because what is operating within the mind is unwholesome. The roots, the causes are unwholesome, then the action, reaction is actually unwholesome. So this we need to see whenever we are following something, whether it is leading to harm or any harm to ourselves or to the others, then we better abandon it. And when you know that once you follow something, it provides some benefit to you and to the others, there is no harm at all, then probably we can follow it. So Buddha give a very basic criterion here based on the wholesomeness and the unwholesomeness, recognizing whether a certain practice is bringing some harm or happiness, harm or any kind of harmless state. So we always have to give the preference to the harmless, beneficial, and more wise kind of an result, then we can select it. And unwholesome roots. So greed, hatred, and delusion are considered as the unwholesome roots. A person driven by these will harm others through unethical actions and cause suffering for themselves and others. So they are the unwholesome roots, greed, hatred, delusion. In the previous criterion, Buddha asks us to see whether something is unwholesome. So that is based on these roots. So when something is unwholesome, we need to see whether the mind has certain amount of unwholesome roots operating. Whether I'm doing this action based on greed or any lust or any desire. Whether I'm doing this action based on any hate, ill will. Or the mind is completely deluded. Or else the other side, the wholesome qualities are non-greed, non-hatred, and non-delusion. Such a person abstains from harm, engages in beneficial actions, and promotes well-being. Now, not only for himself, even to the others. So that is because the wholesome roots are operating in the mind. So therefore, in a way, we need to do an inner reflection. So we have to have certain ability, a skill to reflect the mind, to look at the mind, and to see what are the roots operating right now. Is the mind operating based on unwholesome roots, or is it operating using the wholesome roots? Both can't happen at the same time. So if the mind is under the influence of unwholesome roots, then it is not, the wholesome roots are not there. When the mind is under the influence of wholesome roots, unwholesome roots are not there. So basically one at a time. So therefore it is not that difficult for us to reflect what is the root right now. But anyway, we need certain ability to inquire, to look inside, to introvert. So then only we can understand. So that's why certain amount of practice is required to clearly recognize these qualities. Otherwise, we might be not in a position to understand, not in a position to properly recognize. Now, here Buddha recommends certain areas for us to develop. Now, Kalamas are introduced to the four, what we call the Brahma Viharas. So here the teaching Buddha gives them based on the Brahma Vihara. So loving kindness is a a kind of a wholesome activity, wholesome way of living. You fill your mind with loving kindness and you apply practically that loving kindness towards the others. You're maintaining a friendly attitude. You can be with the others in a friendly way. You're not harming others. And of course, you are not harming yourself. So this loving kindness is therefore obviously a wholesome activity, which is based on the wholesome roots. Similarly, Buddha encourages the compassion, karuna. So maintaining karuna, maintaining compassion in one's mind. It is again a wholesome root. So while you are maintaining karuna, compassion, you will be compassionate to yourself and you will be compassionate to the others. That is also a wholesome root. And similarly, sympathetic joy. So when you can be happy by seeing someone else's success, it is not only that you yourself have to be successful in order for you to be happy, even when others are successful, still you can be happy. So typically the opposite is there. Sometimes you may be happy when you are successful, or you may be happy when your children are successful, your husband, wife, or your relative is successful, but not the others. When the others are successful, probably you might feel jealous. So that is where we are operating with the unwholesome roots. But here the altruistic joy or the sympathetic joy encourages being happy by seeing someone else's happiness, seeing someone else's success. Now, the interesting thing is such people who are having this quality are really a happy people. Because for them to be happy, it is not necessary to have their own success, but even because of someone else's success, they still can be happy. So there are opportunities to be happy, to be glad, are much. Many opportunities are there. So therefore, they often become happy. Maybe their children, when they become successful, still they can be happy. When their parents are successful, still they can be happy. When their friends are successful, still they can be happy. When their neighbors are successful, still they can be happy. So likewise, it is applicable to many others. So whenever someone is rightfully being successful, maybe pass an exam or pass any other activity, they conduct something useful, or they do hard work and earn some money. So whatever the way that if they are righteously, correctly make something successful, so these people are ready to be happy. These people are able to be happy. So this equanimous, so the sympathetic joy is kind of a rare quality, a Brahma Vihara, uh, a heavenly abiding that the humans can develop. So you can see the wholesome, uplifted nature of that. How one can be happy instead of being jealous, how one can be happy on someone else's success. And then the equanimity, upekha, in a way, a certain matured kind of a quality. So you are maintaining a stable mind, a equanimous mind. So rather than allowing the mind to fluctuate, so you maintain the mind at an equanimous state. So outside, there are various chaos. Outside, there are various calamities even. But the person is able to maintain equanimity. So that is kind of a challenge. Because whenever there is a certain calamity happens in the outside, and you start suffering, you start crying, you start lamenting, you feel shocked, you feel threatened. All such difficulties are there whenever the society or the climate and all that are going through certain fluctuations. So we feel threatened, we feel upset, we feel frightened. But amidst all that, are we able to maintain certain equanimity? Even you yourself, or when someone else is going through certain hardship, are we able to maintain equanimity? So this is not an easy task. So you can see a certain depth now we are introducing when we are going through these Brahma Viharas. But the loving kindness, in a way, compared to the last ones, actually are quite straightforward, maintaining a very friendly attitude towards yourself and the others, expecting welfare of everyone. And then we are going towards the compassion. So when someone is in a bad situation, a risky situation, maybe at a kind of unfortunate situation, so you feel that empathy, you feel that compassion. And not only you feel it, if there is something that you can do, you actively do that also. It is not that you feel empathetic or you feel compassionate and then turn around. Rather, you can actively participate if necessary. So that is also there. And certainly you can maintain certain amount of stability in the mind. So being compassionate does not mean that you lose your temper, you lose your balance and you start crying. Rather, while maintaining your stability of the mind, you can participate in a useful way, in a beneficial way to overcome the suffering that the other person is going through. A kind of mature compassion, what we are talking here. And then the sympathetic joy or the altruistic joy is maybe when someone is going through a more positive situation. Then rather than feeling jealous, so you still be happy. A fairly opposite the grain type of a quality. The typical tendency is to be jealous and trying to harm the other person because you don't have that, but the other person is having it. You are not successful, but the other person is successful. But here, the opposite quality, the altruistic joy, is where you still can be happy by seeing someone else's success. And then the equanimity is there. So, a mature equanimity, which is based on the wisdom, amidst chaotic difficulties, still you can maintain the equanimity. So, you can see the four qualities that Buddha encourages Kalamas to develop are fairly an advanced area, gradually being advanced, gradually going to the deeper levels. And cultivate a mind that is free from enmity and ill will, vast, exalted, and measureless. So this is the outcome of the practice of metta, mudita, karuna, upekha, or metta, karuna, mudita, upekha. So when someone is developing these Brahma Viharas, so his mind becomes free from enmity and ill will. So the unwholesome roots are slowly weakened and the wholesome roots are strengthened. And the mind become vast rather than it is narrow and kind of restricted, constrained. Rather, the mind become vast, vastly open, exalted, measureless. Now, typically, our mind is bounded. Our mind is not vast. It is very limited. You love only yourself. You love only to your child, but not to the others. So our minds are very, say, restricted, constrained, quite narrow. But the Brahma Vihara practice helps us to open it, to expand it in a limitless way, in a measureless way. So you can see the level that Buddha encourages the Kalamas, starting from simple loving kindness, maybe applied to your own self, but then slowly expanding it to various other groups, various other beings, and to various other directions. And ultimately, your mind become completely expanded, completely exalted, measureless, boundless, vast area. So the benefit is mental purity and boundless goodwill towards all beings. And after explaining that, a noble disciple gains four assurances as a result of such practice. Now Buddha, after delivering his speech, his discourse, now he is introducing a certain another area to Kalamas. Now suppose if there is another world, good deeds bear fruit, leading to a heavenly rebirth. Now, we still don't know whether there is another birth or whether there is another world. We can't verify it properly. In case it is available, then since you are engaged with good deeds, definitely your good deeds bear fruit. Because in the current life, you are leading a very good life. And as a result of that, then you will have a good rebirth at another level, another world. In case there is another world after the death, there is a rebirth after the death. So here, Buddha, rather than immediately assuring or immediately trying to impose that there is another birth, or there is another realm, there is another world, so the kind of uh, open inquiry is provided to the Kalamas in case there is another world, so you will be all right because current life you have spent a better way. You didn't harm the others, you didn't harm yourself. Instead, you have developed these Brahma Viharas and you are leading a very good life. So, in case there is another world, next birth, so you will be in a good shape. And on the other hand, if there is no other world, one lives happily and virtuously in this life. It is not wasted. Assume that there is no any other world. But in the present life, you have spent it virtuously. There is no harm to yourself. There is no harm to the others. And you have spent a virtuous life. And that has maintained a very pleasant abiding internally. And others also may like it. Others may also praise it. So you are able to maintain a very good living. And in the present life, at first, you are maintaining such a pleasant environment, mental environment. And if evil befalls the wrongdoer, now we are talking here about the karma. Now, in case karma is true and the evil, what one has done, is falling onto that person, onto that evil doer, but you are is protected because you are not an evil doer. So you are doing good things. You are doing the correct things. You are believing the karma maybe, and you are only doing the correct things. So since you haven't done any incorrect things, wrongdoings, so there is no any influence coming from that because you haven't done that. If evil does not befall the wrongdoer, but here still you have nothing to worry because you haven't done that. So it is completely irrelevant to you. So you are not an evildoer, you are a non-evildoer. You are still purified, you are still protected. You haven't done any evil thing. So here Buddha is giving a very open criteria, even quite applicable today, because sometimes people don't want to believe certain things. They say, okay, I can't measure this, I can't verify this using an instrument. I can't verify the future birth using an instrument. I don't have enough evidence, so I don't want to believe it. So people are there like that. Doesn't matter. But still, if you lead a proper, good, virtuous life today, in this present life, it is still beneficial. So that's the argument we can understand here. And then key insights from the Kalama Sutta were empowerment of critical thinking. So you are carefully analyzing the situation. Buddha emphasizes personal understanding and judgment over blind faith. The blind faith is discouraged. Rather, personal inquiry and the verification, the practice, practically involving with the teaching and internalizing it and experiencing it and verifying by yourself. So these things are quite encouraged. And the teachings are relevant for all individuals, regardless of their spiritual or cultural background. And the Kalamas are a different, maybe they haven't yet followed the Buddha's teaching. So they are new people. They are kind of strangers to the teaching. But Buddha's teaching is still applicable to them. So the logic that Buddha is telling them is still applicable to them. So irrespective of your cultural upbringing, your educational upbringing, your nationality, ethnicity, still the teaching becomes quite universal, beneficial to everyone. And it is based on the ethics aligning actions with wholesome qualities benefits both the individual and the society. So when an individual is following certain ethical conduct, not only him, but even the other vast majority also get benefited. So they don't need to be afraid of that person because he's an ethical person. He's a virtuous person. There is no harm coming because of him to the society, to the others. So others are also benefiting. Now, after Buddha explains like this, so Kalamas were quite happy because here Buddha didn't criticize someone else's teaching, only said that my teaching is correct. Rather, Buddha has given a certain criteria. Okay, Kalamas, you got to verify like this. You got to see like this. So don't simply believe, rather internalize something and see for yourself. Once you are able to look at through your own experience, then you can come to a conclusion by yourself. It is not a blind faith, not based on blind faith. Rather, you yourself has verified it. So after Buddha's teaching, so Kalamas were happy. They expressed their gratitude, recognizing the clarity and practicality of the Buddha's teaching. And then they take refuge of the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha. And they declare, okay, we from now onwards, we like to be your followers. Not that because you emphasize your teaching is the best thing and everything is empty. Rather, you have given us the criterion. But this is the way that we need to verify certain teaching is correct. The Blessed One has made the Dhamma clear as though he were turning upright what had been overthrown, revealing what was hidden. Now, the Kalama Sutta encourages ethical conduct, critical inquiry, and mental cultivation. It is not that only that Buddha given a criterion, but he has given a practical cultivation, practical method to cultivate the mind also. So those are the four Brahma Viharas. So he has introduced the Brahma Viharas to the people. So that is the mental cultivation side. It provides a framework for discerning truth and making wise decisions based on personal understanding and experience. So, personal understanding, experiential knowledge is fairly highlighted. So, as you know, in the Satipatthana practice, so this experiential knowledge is heavily emphasized. It is not a blind belief. It is not a kind of a dogmatic theoretical hearsay. Rather, the teaching has to be internalized, teaching has to be lived, teaching has to be practiced. Then only we can say, okay, it is true, it is correct, it is available in my mind. Mindfulness is available in my mind now. Effort is something like this. Faith is something like this. Concentration is something like this. Wisdom is something like this. Now I have it. So likewise, you are able to say from your own experience. Previously, we only heard about it. We might superficially learned about it. But with time, as a result of your practical engagement, at one level, you should be able to say safely, okay, now I know what is mindfulness. Now I know what is faith. Now I know what is effort. Now I know what is concentration. And now I know what is wisdom through your own experience. And you can question the dogmas and various teachings and cultivate loving kindness and ethical behavior and make decisions that lead to personal and collective welfare. So like that, so we can understand how the Kalamas were happy and they were ready to accept the Buddha's teaching. And Buddha also encouraged the inquiry and promotes this Brahma Viharas, promoting the mental cultivation. And then one can verify by himself. Okay, with that, I like to conclude today's Dhamma teaching. If you have any question related to today's teaching or any of your own practice, now I like to open the session for questions. Any question from your side, Shalika?
Actually, Kumudini sent me an email. Since she's here already, I would like to see whether she wants to ask her question.
Right.
Okay. Kumudini, do you like to present your question?
Avasarai Bante, I just wanted to ask if you could explain how we can practice Chago, Patinissago, Mutti, Analayo in day-to-day life.
Actually, all that are synonyms for the Nibbana. So, Chago, Patinissago, Mutti, Analayo, all are synonyms for Nibbana. So, I mean, practicing that is basically encourages the letting go. So, we need to start practicing maybe mindfulness, and then as a result of that, we have certain amount of concentration, and then practice certain amount of vipassana. Then slowly you can taste the practice of letting go. So whenever a thought arises in your mind, rather than encouraging it, how we can allow it to pass away, rather than promoting thinking. When there is a desire in the mind, so rather than promoting it, rather than following it, how we can let it go. And when there is a sensual urge arising in the mind, so rather than promoting it, rather than following it, how we can let it go. So likewise, the practice is more into the letting go. So it is not also kind of forceful letting go. Rather, slowly, your mind is attuned to let go. It is very much like things are slipping now from the mind. Now, say for example, when there's a lotus leaf is little tilted, and when you are putting a water droplet, it doesn't stay there. It simply slips from the lotus leaf. So similarly, so mind may have a natural letting go. That is where the chago, patinissago, mutti, analayo. Chago means you donate, you give up. Patinissago. Similarly, you relinquish. Mutti, you free the mind. Mutti, analayo. So you feel dispassionate towards the incoming inputs. So the mind is attuned towards the freedom. So that is the point highlighted at Chago, Patinissago, Mutti, Analayo. So where mind is more into the freedom, more attuned towards letting go, and it understood there is nothing is worthy of attaching or nothing is worthy of grasping. So the freedom is more encouraged. The open awareness, free awareness, and the freedom of the mind is more encouraged.
Thank you, Bante. I'd like to invite Dhananjay to raise your question.
Thero Bante, much merits to Shalika and the Samadhi Buddhist Foundation. I like to make a comment, Bante. This is it's a very truthful and very close to my heart, the sermon you delivered, because I associate people who have learned people, especially engineers, who have a different view on Buddha's teaching. When we have discussions on Dhamma, what they say is, how can we believe the reincarnation? How can we believe that we have come from a different world? So this gives a very, very good understanding how to be yourself. And I will read one of the key principles you taught us today. When you know for yourself that something is unwholesome and leads to harm, abandon it. When you know it is wholesome and leads to welfare, adopt it. My question, Bhante, is how do I make these people more attuned to Buddha's teaching and make them aware and be mindful of the reincarnation? If you do good things in this life, will be okay. And if you do good things, the four Brahma Viharas, next birth will be in a good position. So how could I strengthen their understanding? That is my question, Bante. Theruvan Saranai.
Yeah, actually, I can remember. So I used to give a during my final year. So there was a presentation that we can select any topic. I have selected this rebirth as the topic, the kind of a research area, and I delivered a kind of a presentation on that. There, I found, Dhananjay, actually nowadays there are enough evidences. It is not anymore a kind of a blind belief. There are certain scientific researches already conducted by many scientists based on the reincarnation, and many stories that they have gone after. They verified, they collected the data, and they visited those places. Sometimes explained by certain children, and then they go to those old places and verify those are there. One such person is Ian Stevenson, who is who was a professor in one of the leading universities in USA, and he has conducted many research on this area, and maybe he has published a book. I can't remember the name of the book. And one key area is that. The other one is the child prodigies. You know that certain children are there, they have some extraordinary skills. Suppose that someone is born in Sri Lanka, now he is just 2 years, but he or that little kid is talking in Chinese, for example. That little kid may be talking in Hindi, maybe talking in English very eloquently, and not with, say, the teachers or parents' influence. And maybe he's talking on astrology, maybe talking on some very scientific topic. So likewise, those child prodigies are another area which has certain roots. Actually, we can't attribute any other reason why these child prodigies are having such extraordinary skills other than coming from the past life. So that is another area that we can think of. The reincarnation is true. Actually, Buddha not merely talking about the reincarnation, rather he explained the rebirth. Typically, the reincarnation is where you had a human life in the past life, and now you are born as another human being in the present life. So typically, the human existence is continued. So that is sometimes we call as the reincarnation. But rebirth is more general. So human being can transform into another being. Say, yes, last birth may be a human, this birth may be an animal. This birth may be an animal transferred to another type of an animal. So likewise, so it's a broader area that Buddha introduced this rebirth at different realms. Animal realm, human realm, Deva realm, Brahma realm. So many areas are there. But the problem is, as you said, sometimes we are unable to convince because they are with certain doubts, and still the science is unable to build a certain instrument to verify it. And on the other hand, we might have a wrong belief based on this, thinking that there is a person every time continuing his life. Past, there was a person, and now also there is a person. Future, also there is a rebirth, and this person is continuing. We might end up with the belief of a soul, a self. So that is also wrong. That Buddha denies. So it is not a person or a self continuing a continuous existence in the samsara. Rather, the causes and conditions are coming together and helping together. As a result of that, one may be born to this life, and instantaneously things are arising and passing away. So that there is no any everlasting, ongoing entity as such. So each and everything is instantaneous, transient. So therefore, Buddha's teaching is not only giving the karmical aspect, but also giving us the aspect of the impermanence, how a flux or how a continuity can happen without a self. So these are the very interesting areas, actually quite challenging areas. So how a continuity happens without a self. without a person, without a being. So these are the very interesting areas actually we can encourage, that typically the engineers are with some good intellect, but rather than using it only to very physical, mundane type of things, so why don't we encourage them to inquire into some spiritual areas? So that skill is also available in all human beings. But unfortunately, when engineering is introduced to the human mind, so they more into the materialistic approach, more into the physical approach, ignoring the spiritual side. Ultimately, they end up with more into the materialism, ignoring all the spiritual aspects and end up with the materialism. So that is the disadvantage of the science in a way. And on the other hand, they promote more thinking. They promote more logical thinking, reasoning, and their minds are fairly into thinking, and they can't stop thinking. So Buddha's teaching or the approach encourages the calmness, happiness, peacefulness of the mind, the concentration of the mind, and using which you do another type of inquiry, another level of an inquiry. It is not that we are trying to inquire using various formulas, various logics, and using various instruments. Rather, in the mind, you are supposed to develop certain qualities, certain spiritual qualities. Using those qualities, you can do the experiment. Using those qualities, you can do the inquiry. So that's why a Buddhist practitioner may go to the forest not with the instrument, but he is supposed to develop his own mind to have certain skills. Using those skills, now he can do his own experiment. Certain practical, experiential knowledge can be developed using those skills. Mindfulness, concentration, proper effort, balancing of effort. And now you have the facility to understand. Any comments, Shalika?
Actually, Bhante, I want to thank Dhananjay for that question, because I came across the same situation when he was teaching. It came to my mind. One of my friends actually said the same thing. So he's supposed to be coming from the engineering background as well. So he was telling me like. When I was talking about this Dhamma, he was saying, how do we know whether we have like a rebirth? And then he's like all these things. And the question I asked was like, do you live a wholesome life? I have not heard about this, Kalama Sutra before. Then I said, if you do good things and to yourself and to the others, and that's good enough. You don't have to believe in anything. And I even said practice this Sattva Brahma Viharana, being being kind to other people. If you can be happy about others' happiness, and I think that's all you can do right now. I think if you do that, would be good. That is when he was when you were explaining about like how Buddha presented it to the Kalamas. He didn't say that there are no another world or no rebirth. He said, if there is a world, if you practice good, you will get good fruits. So I was glad that I could, conclude that conversation with him like that. The engineers always, they analyze things, they want to find the logic behind it, and you can't prove everything with logic. It's hard because you cannot. Nobody had said that. Oh, I had my previous life, as you said. Now there are a lot of scientists are coming up with so many findings, but it seems like it is hard to convince them. So I think, as you said, that is what we can do. Do good things and have a wholesome life and do good things to the others, and you will get good results. Yeah.
Correct.
We know, right, Bhante, from our background. Thank
But
you.
anyway, nowadays there are many engineers who are into the spiritual side as well, more than previous time, because because of the facilities available and Dhamma available everywhere, and there is a great opportunity for engineers to step into the Dhamma path, and there are many people who are honestly practicing. So that's the beauty, that's the encouraging fact. So our effort is not in vain. So there are many being practicing, and they honestly practice, because so once they get into the path and they keep inquiring, because they have that the skill of inquiring is in them. So they have that root, they have that base, the ability to inquire. So if they properly attune to that with certain mindfulness, certain concentration, using that they can inquire properly. Because that confused mind will not give you proper results. So it is not through thinking, through mere logical reasoning that you can really come to a conclusion. Rather, you have to have a clear mind, calm mind, unbiased mind. Then only you can do a proper inquiry. So even for one to do the proper inquiry, so the mind has to be fairly clear, fairly unconfused, fairly concentrated, and unbiased. So you can't inquire based on your own prejudices.
Exactly.
So it has to be a fair inquiry.
Basically, they have to be open-minded. So, as you said, I really believe what you said. When they start practicing and they see the results, and definitely, their analytical skills, and which really help them to basically grasp this. It's like for them, it will be like, because they have that intelligence, and it's a matter of making it turning into a wisdom.
Exactly. No, actually, the hard part is the samatha part for engineers. That's what I feel. Because their minds are into more thinking, more confusion, and many multitasking. Minds are more into the scattered nature. So the beginning, in that sense, they have to come down to the basics. So that's the most difficult thing, because they have to be like a child, very innocent, rather than thinking I am an engineer, I am so and so, I have this, that degree, and this thing, that thing. So if in case they have such kind of a very conceited mind, so it's very difficult. But if they have some inquiry and say, okay, there are certain skills, first of all, I need to develop in the mind. Currently, the mind is scattered. Currently, the mind is in a perplexity. Currently, the mind is in confusion. With such a mind, I can't do this kind of a spiritual quest. Let me develop certain amount of mindfulness. Let me develop certain amount of concentration. So such kind of a very humble attitude gives them a very good opportunity for them to step into the practice. And once they develop those skills, then it's a matter of further continuing their inquiry. Now they have the instruments. Spiritual instruments are with them now. Now they can continue the inquiry based on those instruments. So that is the vipassana. Vipassana is nothing but a type of an inquiry. You keep on understanding the reality. What is the truth? What is the correct? How they are true behavior. Is there any essence in any of these? It's a very intelligent type of inquiry. But first of all, we need to have certain amount of a skill to do that. I mean, before you do an experiment, like you prepare the apparatus and you prepare the necessary instruments, here also we need certain amount of prerequisites, so that we need to admit. So if they are able to admit it and develop it, then it's a matter of applying it further in their religious inquiry.
That's right, Bhante.
Yeah.
There was a hand raised. I don't know whether it's gone now. Bhante, there's another, actually, in the chat, there's a question. Bhante, could you please give the name of the book by US professor?
That's why I can't remember the name, but I can remember the name of the professor. He's Ian Stevenson. Ian Stevenson, you can Google it and see what are his publications. And he already passed away. But I can remember that there were many researches he conducted on rebirth and reincarnation. He even visited Sri Lanka to do such experiments. He visited several other countries even to do this research, and then based on that he has published many research papers and maybe a book I can't remember the name of the book, but the person is Professor Ian Stevenson.
Hold on a second. Yeah, I think, hold on. Radhika had put that in the chat. I don't see that.
I found it. He's from University of Virginia, School of Medicine, and Ian Stevenson and Cases of the Reincarnation Type. So like that, he has published many books. So this is one thing. He's from University of Virginia.
Dhananjay, do you have a question?
No, I just saw that message, Shalika, 20 cases suggestive of reincarnation by
Yeah.
Ian Stevenson.
Yeah, Radhika had put it. Thank you, Radhika. Bhante, I have just a question, like, about this Satara Brahma Viharana, like, about this equanimity. Basically, Bhante, when someone like, even like, the compassion, right? Compassion and what is the other one? In even metta, like all these, like we can come to take our mind to an equanimity, right?
But the problem is, it can be kind of ignoble or ignorant type of equanimity also. That's the issue. So now, say for example, there is an opportunity for you to help. Maybe there is someone has fallen on the ground, and you are the only person close by, and you can ignore and maintain equanimity. But that is not the equanimity that Buddha encouraged. So there you need to apply the compassion. But equanimity here is based on the wisdom. So there are a certain amount of wisdom underneath the equanimity. It is not an ignorant type of an equanimity that Buddha encouraged. Rather, it is based on the more wise equanimity. And that is more into vipassana. I mean, at one level, you can attribute some kind of a situation to karma, and you can say, okay, this is because of his karma. So I have nothing to do at this. In case really there is nothing to do, then you can maintain the mind in an undisturbed state by applying it to karma, maybe, fine. But more equanimity comes based on the vipassana. Because you have seen the reality, you have seen how vulnerable things are, how uncontrollable things are, how impermanent things are, how intrinsically there is a certain amount of suffering included, a friction included, and things are beyond our control, things are based on the non-self. So there you get a thorough experiential as well as theoretical understanding, more realistic understanding about the nature. So that wisdom gives the mind a very profound equanimity. Sometimes we call it as sankharupekha. So based on by truly knowing things properly, now you are maintaining equanimity amidst many areas. Now that's, I mean, say for example, to the Arahant, it is mentioned. So when he is going through some pleasant experience, some pleasurable experience, still he can maintain equanimity. Because the next moment things can change the otherwise. And similarly, when he is going through some unpleasant, hard, suffering type of an experience, still he can maintain the equanimity. Because again, things can change. Because his mind has that stillness. His mind is now not associating the formations, because he don't believe that the formations can give him satisfaction. Now, that's the problem. Now, typically, we are going after different conditioned phenomena. We expect happiness from conditioned phenomena. We expect happiness from conditioned situations. Those are vulnerable. Those are depending on so many other factors. So how can we expect happiness, everlasting happiness from a vulnerable situation? Things are changing. There may be other influences influencing the state, and at the next moment it can vary, it can change. So if you are dependent on a completely conditioned, impermanent, non-governable state, then you are going to suffer. So understanding that, now you start letting go of all that conditioned phenomena, no point of grasping it. So you try to maintain the mind at a more equanimous, more unattached, more independent state. Rather than the mind is dependent on any conditioned phenomena, now you are supposed to maintain an independent mind, a free mind, unattached mind. So that is the unique area more into the wisdom, more into vipassana, where the Buddha is encouraging equanimity towards.
As an example, Bhante, like when this is something I have experienced, when I'm doing like a loving kindness meditation. So once you start just myself, and then I, spread the metta for the entire universe, at that time, like, it's that equanimity state that, like everything is become like neutral, like calm, and because it is not specific for like certain group of people, or it's for the entire universe. So that is, I was thinking, like in each these categories, when you do it like to the extent, like, spread much as possible, it will, your mind will become, actually will not be kind of disturbed, that you are like so happy, like, you're happy for someone else, and your mind can become to an equanimous state. That's what I was actually.
Yeah, and that's why, I mean, this for Brahma Viharas are gradually moving towards the equanimity. You start with some basic loving kindness, and then you can spread it towards the compassion, practical, even being compassionate, empathetic towards yourself and the others. And now you can be happy even with someone else's success. Your capacity is further expanded. And now you step into the equanimity. So that is where you are landed ultimately. So the equanimity is very much like where you are maturing your practice. But one can continuously be in the mind, in the metta, in the loving kindness. It's possible. One can continuously be in the compassion. It's still possible. But encouragement seems to be there towards the equanimity. So that is the maturing of the practice. Now, I like to say this is applied even to the mundane level. Now, say, for example, you as a parent, you start having your children, and you have the loving kindness to your child. So when he is crying, and you have certain compassion to your child, and when during his success you have the joy, you can be happy by seeing your child is now progressing, he is learning, he is developing certain skills, he is being a successful person in the society, in the education. So you can have that happiness. That is the mudita part. Now suppose now he is an elderly person, now he is starting his own life, he has his own spouse now. Now you can't influence him. Now you need to let go, and now you have to practice the equanimity, isn't it? Now you can't have loving kindness and compassion and interfere him every time. Now you have to let go, and you need to understand, okay, he has his own capacity, he has his own, priorities, and he has his own way of thinking. So don't interfere now. You have to maintain the equanimity right now.
Letting go.
Exactly.
That's true, Bhante. Thank you so much. And let me see whether there are any questions on the chat. No, there are some information about like, yeah. We have a really good participants on the rebirth, so it is really good. They're actively participating in like providing the information for all our participants. Thank you so much.
Someone else is also telling, Vasanta Senanayaka is telling that there is a very detailed account of rebirth by Jenny Cockle. It is verified by her contact she had with her children of a previous life. Very interesting. This is the first time I heard about that.
Yeah.
This Jenny Cockle, he has the interesting, this one, past lives and future lives, journey towards time. So these are different books, living with past lives. Now all are into the, seems to be for this related to this rebirth by Jenny Cockle. This is a new finding to me. Thanks for sharing that information.
Okay, Bhante.
Okay, Shalika, shall we wind up then?
Yes, there are no
Okay.
more questions, it seems. Thank you so much for the wonderful teaching today, and as always, and thank you all for your participation. Hope to see you all in another month. Thero Sannai Bhante.
Thero Sannai.